do you work with and compete with the likes of these gigantic companies on a daily basis?
Thanks for having me. I think that in technology, the best solutions always follow the customer. And it turns out that work is changing for most people. We use more and more applications, more and more devices. Our teams vary. And so it turns out a lot of people touch all these services. So even when technologies compete on some fronts, if you're focused on the customer, you have to focus on making everything work together. And this has been one of the strong areas for Dropbox for quite some time, is that everything comes together with content.
So, you're talking about how the work landscape is shifting and Dropbox is part of that shift. What are some trends we're going to see in workplace productivity and collaboration this year?
Well, I think there's two trends that have been rolling through the workplace for some time, but this year they're going to become critically important for most organizations. The first is that most people realize now that work is getting done in teams, and those teams are becoming more and more varied. Who you work with on one project is different than another. It doesn't cut cleanly across the organizational lines, the hierarchy. In some cases, you're working with people outside the company. And so having tools and services that naturally connect across all those different boundaries is really important.
So tell us about the tools that you're offering. I mean, you just bought a company called HelloSign, digital signing contract company.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think that the space, digital signature, e-signature is one of those areas, workflows, which starts with content, right? You have documents that are created constantly. Dropbox happens to be a platform that a huge number of people have trusted with an incredible amount of content. And so making that workflow work between the creators, people running the process, people who are signing, many of which are outside the company, right? Not in your org chart, not in your IT system, is one of the places where Dropbox thinks it can add a lot of value.
So obviously, cybersecurity has been a big issue. We've seen these massive hack attacks over and over again. What are you doing to make sure that that doesn't happen to Dropbox, given the incredible amount of personal information that you have on your users?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, it's something that's incredibly important to the company. I mean, Dropbox scale really is surprising to most people, right? Over 500 million users, 2 exabytes of content. Dropbox is built on the trust that our users, both individuals and in the workplace, put into Dropbox to protect their information. And so as you can imagine, we pride ourselves on kind of the world-class infrastructure, security systems, technology, and we're always pushing the front edge of that. Many times collaborating with our peers around identifying threats and making sure that we deal with them as quickly as possible.
There's been a ton of consolidation in enterprise software. Do you imagine that Dropbox will, including giant acquisitions, I mean, do you imagine that Dropbox will continue to be an independent company?
I'm relatively new to the company, but I have to tell you, there's a lot of excitement within the walls at Dropbox about the potential for this platform. If you look again at what's going on right now, content really is becoming king. More and more deliverables are the content that people produce, share, and collaborate around. And as more and more collaboration happens online, we're seeing Dropbox as more and more of a platform where all these different partners, some of which you mentioned, all come together. So whether you're using Microsoft Office, whether you're using G Suite, whether you're using the latest startup, all of that comes together around the content in Dropbox. And we think we have a role to play in creating a more enlightened way to work with less distraction, less noise, and more focus on the work. So we see that as a really high potential path. And so we still see it as very early days in terms of what Dropbox is building.